we're going to test out some of the Thrones of Decay units coming to the game and see how they do against some of the older units of the game. So let's go! We're going to kick it off with some stunty bros in the Doomseekers, an elite anti-infantry unit, but we're going to throw them in at the deep end against the Exalted Bloodletters, one of the best elite anti-infantry units in the goddamn game. And we can see why, as the Doomseekers have lost half of their health already. Although they are giving it back a fair bit, but still, it's looking pretty doomed for the Doomseekers. I guess they're going to find their doom. And this was a little surprising to me. I expected Doomseekers to do better because they have magical attacks and the demons have a 20% physical resistance, which will be negated by the magical attacks. So, in theory, the Doomseekers were going to nail this one, but they certainly didn't. And they didn't even get close to taking out any of the units, to be honest. I also tried them out against Chosen Great Weapons, another elite top-tier infantry, but this went about the same way as it did Bloodletters. They fared a little bit better, the Doomseekers, but still not able to get anywhere near taking out the Chosen. But this was a little less surprising. The Chosen are a bit more expensive than the Doomseekers, but the Doomseekers are more expensive than the Bloodletters, but they lost to them pretty badly. Not that price dictates everything, but one has to wonder whether Doomseekers are worth the money. And this final Doomseeker surviving here... Oh, we need to censor his death. I'm sorry. His beard got chopped off. I cannot show you that. Alright, what about a test against a less expensive elite infantry? Good old Black Orcs. Surely the Doomseekers should be able to take these out. Now, I think the problem for the Doomseekers is in their unit size. There's only 32 of them in a unit, compared to the 80 of all these other units. So I think maybe there's a case to be made there that the Doomseekers need 48 models in their unit rather than 32. 32 perhaps isn't enough. But obviously this is just straight up Doomseekers, no buffs. In campaign you can buff them up to high heaven, as I recently did in a Slayer video. But as for this battle, as you can see, they are just about able to beat Black Orcs. Mostly, they do lose some of them, and they are absolutely destroyed afterwards, so yeah. I had one last test I wanted to try with Doomseekers though, and that was having them take on Bloodletters again, but this time not letting the Exalted Bloodletters charge, because historically in Total War Warhammer, Slayers have always been terrible at taking charges. Even in Warhammer 1, the normal Slayers, if they take a charge, they get destroyed, because they've got no armor, of course. So, will the Doomseekers do much better, not losing, half of their health in the first 5 seconds? So far, they're looking pretty good. Bloodletters down to about half health. Doomseekers at about 2/3 of their health, so going okay for them so far. Can they hold on in the long run though, as the battle starts to wear on and their advantage of charge bonus wears off after like 13 seconds? And it turns out, yes, this can allow the Doomseekers to beat the Exalted Bloodletters and still have a bit left in the tank for some more fighting. So the moral of the story here is don't let your Doomseekers be the front line and charge in first. Have something mop up the charges for them, like miners maybe, and then send in the Doomseekers, because they suck at taking charges. Next for the Dwarflets, I wanted to try out the new Grudge Rakers. These are like the shotgun infantry, similar to the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses, who we're going to compare them to. The first test, who can take out a Dreadsaurian the fastest? How many volleys before it routs? We've had one so far. This is going to be the second volley coming in here. Dreadsaurian nearly at half health. And you can see I positioned it pretty much at the end of the Grudge Rakers' range. So they're not going to be super accurate. Third volley coming in. Will it get the rout? The leadership says yes, it's wavering, it's -17 leadership, and away it goes. So it took 3 volleys from 2 units of Grudge Rakers. Let's see how the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses do. They're a very similar unit. They have a little bit less missile strength than the Grudge Rakers, but let's see if they can put it away in 3 volleys, or maybe less. Somehow, first volley coming in. Similar damage to the Grudge Rakers, perhaps. Blunderbusses used to be absolutely disgusting when they were released, but they did catch a bit of a nerf, I think. Still very strong though. I positioned the Shredder of Lustria a similar distance away as I did with the Grudge Rakers. But the Shredder down to about half health. Will he get routed by their third volley? Let's see if it ever goes off. There it is. Bang, 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 bang. Leadership 7. It's wavering, -17, and that is surely going to be the end. There we go. So again, 3 volleys to rout the Shredder of Lustria. A very similar performance. What about a shootout then, between Grudge Rakers and blunderbusses? Who's the best shotgun boy? Well, they're both getting knocked around all over the place. The Chaos Dwarfs especially here. Look at them, all just falling down from that power of the Grudge Raker. And Grudge Rakers mostly still on their feet. Now, as I was watching this fight, I noticed that the Grudge Rakers were getting their shots off more often, so I checked the reload time of them versus the blunderbusses, and it's 8 seconds for the Grudge Rakers and 11 seconds for the blunderbusses, which is quite the difference and a big advantage for the Grudge Rakers. On the flip side though, the Grudge rakers have a bronze shield, so they're blocking like 30% of missiles, while the blunderbusses have a silver shield and are blocking like 55% of missiles. So some interesting advantages for both, but as I mentioned earlier, the Grudge rakers do a fair bit more damage per shot than the blunderbusses, which is why they absolutely destroy them here and still have like half their health left, which is pretty crazy because the Grudge rakers actually cost less than the blunderbusses. So they may be a little overtuned at the moment, but a nice short-range missile infantry for all you dwarf lovers. Next, onto the Hawkland Long Rifles. The Empire's new sniper infantry. They've got very long range, nice armor-piercing damage. Let's give them the ultimate sniper test to start with and pit them against the Jezzails, one of the best sniper-type units in Total War Warhammer, and they have a little more range than the long rifles, which we are going to allow them to use, but they do a little bit less damage than the long rifles. And while the Jezzails reduce missile block chance, that doesn't affect the long rifles because they don't have a shield, which is predictably why they are going to lose this battle against the Jezzails, because the Jezzails have a silver shield blocking potentially 55% of the incoming missiles, which is pretty huge in a shootout, right? So in this kind of test, the long rifles not going to do so good against these units with silver shields, unless you can make use of their snipe ability that they have, which allows them to remain hidden while firing, but you have to actually hide them somewhere. So in some trees, if they shoot out of the trees at Jezzails, the Jezzails won't be able to see them to fire back. So they'll have the advantage in that way, which is nice because it makes them a little bit different from the other sniper units, the Jezzails and the Crane Gunners, for example, as they do rely on silver shields. But yeah, overall, as a good rule of thumb with the long rifles, you really don't want to trade missile fire with anyone. They don't have a shield and they only have 20 armor. They're going to get destroyed by enemy missiles. I also did a similar test as I did with the Grudge rakers, seeing how quickly they could blast down some kind of large, in this case an Arachnarok spider. I positioned it just inside their range and it took them 4 volleys to rout the big boy off, and I then tried the same thing with Crane Gunners, who are virtually the same as Jezzails, and it took them 4 volleys as well to get rid of the Arachnarok spider, so pretty much the same performance as the long rifles, and overall those 3 units, Jezzails, Crane Gunners, long rifles, basically the exact same unit, except the Crane Gunners and Jezzails are good at taking on other missiles with their shield, whereas the long rifles need to use snipe. Next to the Nuln Ironsides. These are a new handgun unit. We're going to test them out against the good old classic OG Thunderers all the way back from Warhammer 1. Now these 2 units have the same range, but the Ironsides do nearly double the damage of the Thunderers, and they have this Black Powder Discipline ability, increasing their accuracy and reload skill when they've been stood still for 10 seconds. However, the Thunderers have more armor and a bronze shield. So let's see how this one plays out, both sides kicking off. But also worth noting that the Dwarfs do have a bigger unit size with 80 compared to the 60 of the Ironsides, but the Ironsides actually have more health. So the men in the unit are tougher than the Dwarfs. As this fight starts to wear on though, there is more of a health gap forming, the Ironsides outperforming the Thunderers, and eventually they do manage to waver them and break them, still with half of their health left as well for the Ironside. So a dominating performance, but this was to be expected. The Ironsides are of a higher tier and are a bit more expensive, so they are a superior unit at shooting stuff with handguns. So let's test them with something a little more on their level, shall we? With some Fire Glaives from the Chaos Dwarfs. They have about the same base damage as the Ironsides, but of course they don't get the extra buffs from the Black Powder Discipline. And while the Fire Glaives are about 400 more expensive than the Ironsides, you are getting a good melee unit in the Glaives as well. They have armor piercing, they have good stats, they have anti-large. So you're paying for all that, which doesn't really come into use in this kind of test. So price certainly isn't everything, but it's pretty even so far. It's a pretty close fight, to be honest. The Chaos Dwarfs eventually dropping down to their last quarters or thirds of health, while the Nuln Ironsides are about the same. Some wavering on both sides now. It's going to be a close one. The Chaos Dwarfs do have that extra armor as well, so that's a bit of an advantage. But who's got more leadership and staying power here? It's anybody's guess. Chaos Dwarfs broken on this side. That's 2 down. Make it 3 down. Still 2 Chaos Dwarfs hanging in there, though. Will they be able to break any of the Ironsides? This one's wavering, looking like this one should win. So, fair to say that the Ironsides are hanging in there with the best of them, some of the best gunpowder units in the game. They are going to lose one fight to the Chaos Dwarfs, but overall a victory. They still have a bit of health left in some of the other units, so they can still do some work. But yeah, Nuln Ironsides, basically your standard handgunner unit, just way better at the job. Some cavalry now with Knights of the Black Rose. We're going to kind of compare these with the good old Reiksguard and see who can be better at taking down some infantry. Starting off, we're going to mow down some Norscan Marauders. I've got 3 units of each cavalry on either side. Let's see how quickly they can rout away these Marauders. Reiksguard coming in here with the big charge bonus, the shock cavalry. They're the ones designed for charging, but the Black Rose have done pretty much a similar amount of damage, and they're actually a melee cavalry, which means their charge bonus is generally smaller, but they get more melee defense, so they're better in prolonged combat. But it looks like both sides are going to rout the Marauders off of one charge in about the same amount of time, which is kind of surprising. You'd think the Reiksguard would maybe do it faster because they have that big charge bonus, but similar performance here. Let's try it now with a tougher enemy. How about some Saurus Warriors? They most certainly won't be routing after one charge, and they'll be much better in a prolonged fight. But we're going to use these cavalries the way they're supposed to be used. So Reiksguard, I'm going to cycle charge them occasionally, and the Black Rose Knights, we're just going to leave them in straight up combat as they are supposed to do. Now, I actually messed up the arrangement of my cavalry in this one, so it's a little bit hard to see what's going on. Here's some Black Rose boys, done a good bit of damage on these Saurus so far. Here's some more Black Rose boys, and then these last two here are Reiksguard, who it looks like have taken a lot more damage so far than the Black Rose Knights. And now, while I do cycle charge the Reiksguard, I feel like maybe they've been left in there a little bit too long. I was aiming for like 30 to 45 seconds, a more realistic amount of time that you might leave a cavalry in melee. But the Black Rose Knights seem to be hanging in there pretty well with the Saurus, getting damage done, are taking a fair bit of damage themselves, but they are winning. Whereas the Reiksguard have taken a fair bit of damage off of that first fight, and so coming into this second charge, they're maybe not as strong as they could be. But either way, they don't really seem to be pumping on a lot of damage, not as much as the Black Rose Knights are anyway. But by the time I get the Reiksguard to a third charge, they're pretty much nearly done for, and they do actually end up losing most of the fights to the Saurus, while the Knights of the Black Rose have won all of their fights and still have a fair bit of health left to work with. So in this test, the Knights of the Black Rose seemingly superior to the Reiksguard, but it wasn't the fairest test, it wasn't the best cycle charging. So let's run it one more time, this time against Plague Bearers, but I'm going to try to more optimally cycle charge, pulling away like every 15 seconds, because a charge bonus lasts 13 seconds, so we won't leave the Reiksguard in prolonged combat. But the Knights of the Black Rose, of course, will just leave them in the fight. Now, this cycle charging every 15 seconds is probably quite unrealistic because it's difficult to remember to do that in a normal battle with everything else a full army to micro, but the attention here is more on the Knights of the Black Rose, who are doing very well in all of these tests, doing okay against the Plague Bearers here. But the Reiksguard coming in for their second charge here, much healthier than they were the last time with most of their health intact, have done a good bit of damage, got the Plague Bearers down to half health now, and pulling away for the third charge, they're looking pretty good, whereas the Knights of the Black Rose, similarly looking good, not as much health as the Reiksguard though. But by the time we get to the fourth charge and the final charge for the Reiksguard, they are going to be able to take out the Plague Bearers and still have about half of their health left. Whereas the Knights of the Black Rose, they took out the Plague Bearers still, but they lost more health than the Reiksguard did. So the proper cycle charging definitely helped a lot here and shows you the difference between the two types of cavalry, but it also highlights the difference in the amount of work that it took to get the Reiksguard to perform this way. It was a lot of work, right? A lot of micro, a lot of cycle charging, whereas the Knights of the Black Rose, it's simply fire and forget. Just do it once and then leave them there, easy. So if you're someone who struggles with micro, especially cav micro, then the Knights of the Black Rose are going to be a nice one for you because you don't need to worry about them so much. Just leave them there, let them do their thing. But if you want more survivability in a cav, if you want a cav that's going to be there at the end of the battle, shock cavalry is going to be superior, provided you can use it correctly. Now let's move on to the Nurgle boys, starting with the Rot Knights, an armor-piercing anti-large cavalry, something the Nurgle faction really needed. But let's see how they do against the Skull Crushers, one of the best anti-large cavalries. The Rot Knights do have regeneration, so that's going to help them out, but both sides taking a lot of damage early, nearly down to half health after a few seconds, and this one isn't going to last too long. Looks like the Skull Crushers getting a slight advantage, getting a little more damage done. The Skull Crushers do have more armor and a shield, so their melee defense is a little better. This one, though, not actually winning. The Rot Knights winning here, and they do have poison, so they're going to bring that Skull Crusher damage down a little bit, but it's not enough to help them here in these two fights at least. They've lost two here, the Rot Knights, and the Skull Crusher's still in pretty good condition. They could still do some work. The Rot Knights winning one here, though, also with fairly good health. That will also regenerate as well, so that's a big plus for them. Another more favorable win back here, so that's going to be 2 wins for the Rot Knights, it seems, and apparently 3 wins, so ultimately they win this little fight. So overall, a very close fight, a very similar performance from these two units, which means Nurgle has a very strong anti-large cavalry now, and that's great for them. So we know they can hang with Skull Crushers, but what about the ladies' finest, the Grail Knights? Bretonnia, known for having some of the best cavalry in the land, and the Grail Knights are up there as one of the best cavalries in the game. But can they take down the new kids on the block? So far it's pretty even, both losing about half health, maybe a slight advantage to the Rot Knights. We'll see how we go though. Could be the other way here. About even here. Maybe advantage Grail Knights in this one. So a very close fight, but it is going to be the Grail Knights that are victorious, able to rout away most of these Rot Knights. One win here, going to be another one here. Still got a fair amount of health left as well, do the Bretonnians. Breaking them all over the place. Might win this one in the middle, but for the most part, defeated by the French. How embarrassing. I also tried them out against the Bear Cav of Kislev, which had a similar result to the Skull Crusher fight, where they won and lost a bit of both on both sides. Overall, I'd say the Bears were maybe slightly better. And I also tried them out against Demigriffs, who they were able to, for the most part, comfortably beat. So a very strong and very nice addition for Nurgle to finally have that decent anti-large in his roster, and they can hang with the other best cavalries in the game. I also wanted to try out a new addition to the Troll category, the Bile Trolls, for Nurgle, and what better test for them than to take on the Stone Trolls of the Greenskins, probably the best troll unit in the game. But are they still? Let's find out. Oh, we got a troll down already. Is this a bitch troll? Is he dead already from one hit? Nope, he's getting up, he's okay, he can still do some bonking. And of all the videos I've done of these kind of fights, I think this has got to be the lowest IQ matchup we've ever seen. Combined IQ of 44 here between these two units. The Stone Trolls pulling ahead in the damage, it seems. They do have a little more weapon strength and better melee attack. The Bile Trolls have a little less melee attack than normal, but they do have more melee defense. That's a very Nurgle way for a unit to be. And they have more health, but doesn't seem to be helping them here, as they are about to waver in this first fight, nearly at half health. And that seems to be the running theme across all these fights, is that the Stone Trolls are starting to waver the Bile Trolls, even though they have still done a fairly similar amount of damage to each other, so it's kind of weird. But in the end, the Bile Trolls do actually end up beating a couple of the Stone Trolls, so it ends up an actually fairly even fight overall. So these Nurgle Trolls actually pretty good, and up there with the Stone Trolls it seems, although damage output much slower, they're able to survive and hang in here. Now, that's going to be it for most of the testing, and you might be saying, Zerk, where's all the land ships and thunder barges and snapdragons? No, snapdragons? It's a processor for a phone. What do we need to compare those? We're talking about toad dragons. Well, with those units, I didn't really know what to do with them or how to test them. Thunder barges and land ships, they just kind of do their own thing. Just charge them in the direction of enemies and they'll go to work. And there's nothing really to compare them against because they're so different. So, yeah, wasn't really sure what to do with those. And the Toad Dragon, big single entity, anti-infantry, they all kind of work the same, to be honest. You just charge them into a crowd and they'll do something. They're not even that great, most of them. They're just there to be annoying, be a nuisance, be a damage soak, and to get in the way and cause problems. Didn't really know how to test that. But there we go. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel. I'll see you in the future.